Welcome back
Thank
to
you.
the podcast. It's been like a year, I think, since you were one of the first proper ones. Not everyone knows who you are and what you do, so we should do a quick introduction and then maybe where you were a year ago and where you are now and stuff like that. So,
Amazing.
Do you want to start, Pierre?
Should I start?
Yes.
Who am I? So I'm Pierre. I am one of the founders of the Brew Journal, together with Håkan. And I also work in commercial equipment with Brewbox, so distributing Eversys coffee machines. Long history in coffee, coming up 11 years now.
Yeah.
So started my career in Australia. Worked there for a couple of maybe 3 years, and then moved to France when I was 21. And then I've worked in specialty pretty much ever since then. So barista, head barista, started some cafes as the head barista, then trained many baristas. And now I've worked in the equipment world for about 4 years.
Yeah, we're going to come back to Brewbox and of course Brew Journal.
For sure.
But what about you then? Who are you?
So I'm Håkan and Stockholm-based. My entire coffee career has been based in Stockholm almost. There are a few months where I'm outside of Stockholm, but I started like Pierre in just a commercial coffee chain.
Yeah. But it's been a few years now, right?
Yeah, I'm 6 years in the coffee industry now.
Cool.
But it still feels pretty short, So my day-to-day job and business that I run is running Café Pascal, which I'm co-owner, but I'm also there 5 days a week, running the operations, and also co-founder of the Brew Journal with Pierre. And I also have a side gig called Barista Akademin, which is a Swedish online barista course, fully digital. So it's not in-person courses, but just digital videos. And not really much has changed, because you asked where were you 1 year ago and where are you now? But the only detail that is different is 1 year ago we both were in the board of Specialty Coffee Association in Sweden.
Correct.
But now we both left.
Yeah.
I did it so I can compete again. But Pierre,
I will judge you so hard.
Yeah, I hope so. Look forward to it.
Yeah, actually, I might join you on the judging panel.
Oh, you are?
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing.
I think
that would be super, super good.
I'd love to, yeah.
You won't be allowed to judge me.
I won't be allowed to judge you, no.
But Håkan, you also need to stop competing soon.
I need to win at least
beginning
once,
of the career. This is the beginning of the career, yeah.
I need to at least win a championship or something to stop.
But no box of chocolate in the beginning.
Okay.
No, that's for if I win, then I can eat a box of chocolate.
Yeah, exactly.
And share it
That's true.
But actually, on that, I have to say, like, Håkan, you said that you've stayed in one place for like the whole career. But I think that like Håkan is one of the people that I know who's had the quickest ascension in the coffee industry I've ever seen. You went from like Espresso House to like co-owner of Pascal, which is arguably one of the best in the world, in like 3 years or something. But like, tell us about that.
But it all comes down to interest. Like you love passion and interest. You love what you do.
Yeah, it's
you learn. You're like a sponge.
Yeah, it's like the passion, but then also the eagerness to share what you learn, and also this hunger. Because if I have a day off, I can't just sit and chill. Like I want to do something, so I film a coffee video, or I go here. Like back maybe 2 years ago, I used to call Alex and Oscar, be like, "Hey, I'm coming today. We're gonna shoot content." They're like, "Okay," and I just come here, like crash their entire operations. But that's the personality I have. So. Yeah. I think that's a main.
But it's pretty crazy. I mean, you went from like Espresso House to Pascal, and then from Pascal to April, where you got headhunted by Mr. Patrick Roth, and then back to Pascal because you got offered ownership in the company.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
Yeah, I feel very blessed that it happened.
And the bar is so good.
Yeah, the bar is amazing.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's really, really good. And I think we had like 2 coffees there a few days ago. And you said, oh, this is maybe like a little bit slower week. But when we went outside and had our coffee, there was like a constant stream of people coming in. So it's cool to see like small space. Of course, you have amazing pastries, and it will now get even better with the new bakery you're opening up. But like high quality coffee, and it's nice.
That's the thing in Sweden as well. Like it's at least for now, it won't work if you have just the best pure specialist coffee shop and no bakery and stuff. So you have to always have the baking and like food as to lift up the business. But then it sustains the business, and then you can of course geek out even more in coffee and do the things like we do, serving 3 different espressos sometimes, and having the distribution tools and really taking your time to optimize everything.
Yeah, it's very clean.
But I think that's kind of the same everywhere. Like that's a big misconception in the industry that I'm going to have like a coffee bar. Well, actually, they're not it's really hard to make that turnaround. You
Yeah.
almost need to have like you need to almost have a very good retail shelf if you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like I don't know of many places that have successfully just focused on coffee without having anything else. Not without having like a roastery behind. Obviously, Pascal has now started roasting, so that also helps a lot. But
yeah, they have three spaces. But I when I were in London, I went to Roslin, their new location.
love Roslin.
Oh my god, so cool! Like, but it's almost like a dream. Like, so they kind of are capping now like 2,000 flat whites a day.
Oh wow.
Jesus
And
Christ.
they're like, no, we're not gonna make anymore. It's just like and just going behind the bar and see how everything works out. It's really, really cool. And they had like lead times of ordering to cup was like 1.5 minutes or something.
Wow.
But it's like prime location, prime city. They do so much things correct, and they attract so much different people. And there's this like everything is designed for like get in, get out kind of thing. But you still hang around, so you kind of get the feeling, and it's really cool. And it's, I would say, impossible in Stockholm. Like the foot traffic, it's too.
Yeah.
But I think Stockholm's just a different kind of city as well. Like I've thought about this a lot because I'm from Melbourne, which is arguably one of the meccas of the coffee scenes. And like in Melbourne, you know, the biggest rush would be between kind of 6 and 8, you know, morning takeaway.
Yeah.
You just don't get that in Stockholm. Like there's no morning rush. Maybe you do 20 cup of coffee kind of thing before 8, but that's it. Whereas in Australia, you do like, in some places you do 200, you know, before 8. But I think it comes down to culture. Like here in Sweden, there's a big culture around brew coffee. So a lot of people have brew coffee at home. Whereas in London or like Melbourne, people are more espresso based. So talking about like they're doing, you know, flat whites, lattes, cappuccinos. That's the majority of the coffee sales. I know that some places have introduced batch brew, but it's still pretty new over there. So it is hard. Like you can't. It's really hard to replicate that in Stockholm. I mean, I don't know. Do you know how many coffees a day you guys would make?
I mean, we do. Then it's hot beverages, but it's around 250 to 300.
Yeah, right. That's probably one of the like big ones in Stockholm.
It must be.
Yeah, there's not. I think most are capping out around 150, kind of.
I think that's a problem. We shouldn't talk too much about opening cafes and stuff, but we had Slow Hands guys here just before, and how they kind of changed their view and what they thought of opening a cafe close to the train or the subway, what it turned out to be and what it is now. Like, it's really hard. I think what like Roslin and others done, and also Pascal, is like, this is our concept, and then just stick to it. And I think it's good if you can pull that off, of course, but it's hard. So okay, I want to talk about Brew Journal. I want to talk slightly about Brewbox as well, and the future of maybe Eversys and what's happening. But let's start with Brew Journal. What's happening? You're bombarding the internet with amazing information.
Exactly. No, we're coming up to 1 year since we launched.
And what is Brew Journal? From the beginning. Like,
from the beginning.
From anyone.
So the Brew Journal is an email newsletter about brewing coffee or brewing better coffee in 5 minutes or less. So you've probably seen a lot of blogs in the coffee industry, which you can find. You Google and you find a blog. But the difference with us is that we're purely email based. So you get an email sent to you twice every week that gives you short but very helpful information. We have one section which is like what's brewing, where we introduce a new coffee to you, the flavor notes, sometimes how we brew it, we share the recipe. Then we usually have 2 articles each. And sometimes they can be like a deep dive, like does the autocomb really work, or things like this. And sometimes it can be 3 mistakes that ruin your milk and how to fix them. And then we always end it with a quiz section. And we do this so the email feels a bit interactive, And one problem both of us saw before starting this newsletter is that in the coffee world, there's either super basic information that is too basic that it doesn't really help you, or it's super, super advanced. Like it's like you're reading a scientific journal and it's like 300 words. And we're like, okay, we're not going to be one of those, but we're going to be the middleman. So we can take the information from the super advanced articles, make it shorter and use more easy everyday language and make it a bit more personal. Maybe have some jokes in there, so it's easy to read. And then communicate that to the home brewer. Because our newsletter is not necessarily for professionals. It's for the home enthusiast. So,
Super cool.
Exactly. As Håkan said, like a lot of information on the internet, it's either like way too basic, So most people who have maybe started to get into specialty coffee, like it's not really relevant to them anymore. They know the stuff already. But then once you get to there's the kind of the next step from that we've noticed is that there's very advanced, like almost essays kind of thing, like dry, people who've done like tests and stuff like that. And like, I mean, we'll read that stuff, but maybe the people who are just getting into coffee, they're not going to read that because they're not going to understand. And so, yeah, we try to keep it fun, make it very accessible. Our long form articles are 300 to 500 words, so very easily digestible. And then, it's an easy way. Like a lot of people who are into coffee are not baristas. They have maybe an office job or something. They're working at home and they're on the computer all day. And maybe they really love making a V60 in the morning, or they have an espresso machine and they geek out on the weekends making espressos. So those people, they're sitting at work. So instead of being on Instagram or whatever, we send them just small snippets of information Mondays and Thursdays. So it's easily digestible. And I mean, Håkan and I combined, what is that, like 17 years in the coffee industry and we're pretty on trend. I mean, Håkan obviously has a cafe and is a very good competitor. I've got my experience across many different countries in the world, and also obviously with the equipment. And so like we have like a wealth of knowledge, of like practical knowledge. We're not scientists who are like doing tests in a lab. We're just like, oh, well, we know from the hundreds of thousands of coffees that we've made in our careers that this is the best way to approach espresso, for example, or this is the best way to steam milk, or whatever it is. So yeah, that's pretty much what the Brew Journal is.
Yeah, and best way to like funnel people in, is it through Instagram now, or?
So it's very spread. We're like we have a few different tactics. Yeah. The first tactic, when we launched the Brew Journal, we said to ourselves, okay, we're just going to focus on email. Yeah. And the way that it's going to grow is Instagram, but it's also going to be people sharing the newsletter with friends. And that's worked. We do see that people share, but it hasn't grown maybe as much as we expected. And we rely a lot on, like, what would you say?
Word of mouth.
Word of mouth, yeah. And that's a big part of it, but I don't think we've hit the critical mass yet where we can rely on that. Yeah. And so now we have the website up. So on the website we have like selected articles. So we post four articles a week in the newsletter. On the blog we put maybe one a week up. So it's a selected, articles from the Brew Journal. All of the like barista school, so like practical advice on how to make good coffee, that's solely in the newsletter. But we put up like deep dives, comparisons of equipment and stuff on the blog. Cool. We also have an espresso cheat sheet up there, which people should definitely check that out.
Because you just launched that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it's free. Yeah. And what we've done is both of us have been barista trainers for, I've been doing it for 5 years. We've probably been doing it for, 3, 4?
Yeah,
pretty much since the start, yeah. And so what we did was we took like a standard barista course, which would take maybe 2-3 hours, and we compressed all of that kind of knowledge into a one-page document. And so, yeah, if you're making coffee at home, it's just a good like guide to have. Even if even if you're comfortable with what you're doing, it's good to have that there in front of you, so okay, this coffee isn't tasting as good as I want. I'm going to go back to the cheat sheet and have a look at where I could be going wrong, kind of thing. So that's been super successful. Like we've got maybe 60, 70 downloads now. Yeah, it went crazy when we launched it, cool. Which is really nice.
That's amazing. But I think, of course, we kind of geek out a lot, and I try a lot of espresso. But when I brew coffee or espresso, I think like I have like one shot in the morning, and I don't have the time to like do that much. So for me, it's like I look at the time and the weight a lot. So for me, it's like 25 seconds, 45 grams out, and then I adjust my grinder after that. But you that are kind of more into the trends and what's happening now, what's a double espresso at in the world? What's your philosophy?
Well,
or a single, like
to
an espresso.
say it in an easy way, I would say it's basically a 2-to-1 it's a dose or a brew ratio where it's between 3-1 or 2-1. 3-1 is usually for lighter roasts, while 2-1 you can use for more espresso roasts, basically.
Depends who you ask.
Back in the days,
Depends on who you ask.
back in the days, could be 1-1.
Yeah, but I still see that sometimes.
1-1?
Yeah, for sure.
And to explain 1-1 is that you have your portafilter. To make it easy, you bring in 20 grams of coffee, and a 1-1 ratio is that you bring out in the cup 20 grams.
Yeah, and so that's
a 1-2 is 20 and 40 out.
Yeah. And 1-3 would be 20 and 60.
20 to 60.
exactly.
Because I've seen on the Worlds, people are pushing their espressos up to like 50 or 60.
But this is actually, have you heard of this boomer shot? We read an article about this the other day. Yeah, so
that's something for me.
Yeah, so the boomer shot. So this is a trend, and I don't know, but this is definitely happening at the world championships. So a boomer shot apparently is like a classic 2-1 ratio.
Yes.
So me throughout my whole career, it's always been an espresso. It's just been like start at 2-1 and then tweak from there kind of thing. But now people are really pushing it. So another word is also kind of a turbo shot, where people are doing like closer to 1-3. So maybe a 20 gram dose and like a 55 to 60 yield in like 17 seconds or something.
Okay, really fast.
Yeah,
a lot of
and
work.
so that is the new
Are
kind
they
of.
turning the temperature down? Because it must become very hot if you do like a traditional 94 degrees.
Yeah, that's a good
I've
question.
seen many of the places have between 92 to 93 degrees that do that.
Yeah, but still, like it's almost like taking out tea water.
Almost, yeah. But I guess it also depends. Like one of the classic problems is that or not problems, but when people, for example, for us who are, I have an espresso machine at home, and when we make coffee, like I don't keep the cups on top of the espresso machine. I keep them in the cupboard. Yeah. And so if I'm going to make an espresso, say a classic 2-1, a boomer shot, I'll put the cups the cups underneath. They'll be pretty cold. Yeah. And then the espresso isn't super warm.
I do the same.
And so I guess that kind of, and I mean it's also, you have to think like for competitors, they don't have their cups pre-warmed.
No.
They have their cups cooled. So I guess that the longer
even
shots.
colder.
Correct.
Like,
Yeah. Sometimes they have
actively
children.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. So that's apparently the new big trend, or the new, I don't know. I first heard about that maybe 6 months ago. But
cool.
That's definitely like the competitive baristas. I've seen that trend happen for the last few years.
Yeah, but it's also like this. Me and Pierre usually disagree on this because he has his way of brewing espresso, and I have my
specifically
way.
Light roast, I think.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So
what's your take?
I'd argue like I prefer to do like the fast turbo shots where you have 3-1 ratio and the brew time is like 17 to 22 seconds. It usually works great for coffees, but it's a generalization. There's a problem with that though, because if I do that behind the bar with our, you've been to my place. It's like we have the house coffee, which is more traditional 2-1 ratio. Then we have the guest coffee, which is very often 3-1. Yeah. If you do a milk beverage with that, I think that dilutes the coffee too much and it becomes a milky drink. So then you have to instead up dose and do like a Pierre shot where you do almost not a ristretto, but between a classic shot and a ristretto, and have a like 30-35 second brew time.
Because that you see in competitions a lot. Yeah. Like both going into darker roasts and shorter shots when mixed with milk.
Yeah. But I think that the approach. I really like the name of that Pierre shot. You can trademark
you heard it here
trademark
first,
that.
yes.
Exactly. Yeah, but I think it depends on what you want out of an espresso as well. Like I really like syrupy espresso. Like that's my jam, and especially light roast, it can be hard to get it kind of like that. Yeah. And so the compromise that and I also come from Melbourne. I come from the milk drink capital, and so I like a coffee that can punch through the milk. If I want it. And so like when I brew some espresso, which is very light roast, I tend to do a tighter shot. So like maybe 20 grams in, 30 grams out, and then maybe 35 seconds or something. So really just get everything out. Cool. Yeah. But then it's, we can compare. I think we have some demos coming up.
We're gonna
brew some coffee.
Yeah, brew some coffee.
But it depends what your outcome is like. For me, I prefer like, instead of intensity, I prefer like smooth, silky mouthfeel and clean flavors. But if I sacrifice a bit of intensity, I'm fine with that. Yeah. For example, for other people, it's like you want the intensity and the thickness, but then you maybe sacrifice flavor clarity, for example.
For sure, and I think it also depends on the coffee that you're brewing. Like if you have like a super funky, very overly fermented espresso or coffee,
Oh.
then I would probably not brew it the way that because that would just be a punch in the face, right? Yeah. But then I probably wouldn't drink that coffee because that's not my favorite coffee.
The big problem of falling in love with the visual aspect of espresso, both when it comes to, like, I talked to it with Slow Hands earlier, like how it actually looks when it comes out, and also like being a judge now, being on the like crema yes or no thing, and if anyone says like, yeah, my crema is super thin, and it hurts my heart, like, and even though I knew that it will probably taste better and it doesn't matter how it looks and everything like that, I like, if I get an espresso with a solid crema, it just, my expectations are like already fulfilled.
Right.
You feel safe.
I feel safe. I do love to see like this shiny espresso coming out the machine.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem for me because I tend to like move into that box.
But where do you think that comes from? Because that's a very like, it feels like a bit of an older school like train of thought
and
with the crema.
I am a little bit older than you guys, and I started doing coffee 2007,
right,
or something like that. Everything was Italian, kind of dark roasted. So of course it comes from the visual aspect back in the days, how it's like was supposed to look like.
And I mean, that's also going back to the times before scales, before like AVR and everything like that. It was you really had to look. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you just looked at it and it was like, boom, perfect.
But it does make sense, because let's say you got an espresso that didn't have crema back then. This was probably severely under-extracted.
Yeah, or
like,
very
it's very
old
difficult
coffee.
with a coffee like that, Robusta and dark roast. Like, it just screams for
And
crema.
I think it's very, very deeply rooted in 98% of all the coffee.
We're talking about crema, and I was saying that now you said that a lot of customers, like 98% of customers, are probably still there with the crema thing. And I remember I had a customer who came to Pascal back in the day when I worked there, and she didn't take the double espresso that I served her because the crema was too light. She said, no, it's not going to be good. And I said, look, it's light roast coffee, like this is brewed like,
don't go,
you know, I've just dialed it in kind of thing. And then she was like, no, I'm Italian. And it's hard because like, you can't tell the customer they're wrong, but they are wrong. in that situation. So you're like, I don't even remember how I handled it. I think I just made like a house blend that we had at the time, and I said like, look, because
I think it was Martin from Slow Hands telling me that they now 3 years later probably filtered out all the ones that don't like roasted coffees, because they have like drop coffee now. They switch around a lot and they do really light espressos. It's not maybe their main thing anymore. But still, they have now a client base of people that know what they do, they like what they do.
But I think that that's important, like, and you probably have a lot more experience with this than me, maybe. But I've spoken to, I mean, in my work as working with a lot of cafe owners and stuff, you hear what makes each place successful and stuff like that. And I'm always very curious because owning a cafe is very hard, actually. And I had this advice from one owner who said that, you know, they're so focused on their concept that they're willing to say no to people who don't like it. And he was like, they have a few, it's like wine bars and pizzerias and stuff, and pizza. And he said like, no, if someone doesn't like our concept, then it's okay that they don't come back, you know, because we know that the people that like our concept will come back. And they have an incredibly strong customer base who rave about them. And he said, like, if we listened to everyone who gave their feedback, we would just have, you know, frozen pizza that we reheat, and we'd have like just generic beer, you know, on tap, which is not at all what they have. And I think that that's very admirable. And it goes back into what you're saying of filtering out the customer base. Like, if you are going to open a cafe, you need to really stick behind your values, because the people who love it will come back and share, be your biggest kind of marketing tool. And the people who don't, well, then they don't have to come back. Like, they, you know, as long as your audience, your concept is good enough for a base of customers, then you will see that they'll come back.
And I think that could be the main problem in Sweden, maybe.
For sure.
Like, the customer base is maybe...
It's quite small.
It's quite small.
Yeah, but I also feel like it's about expectations, because, I don't know if we talked about this in the last podcast, but sometimes it can be that you go to a new specialty coffee shop and you feel stupid because you don't understand what the menu says. It's very advanced for the average Swede, you know. So I think it's important also to make it clear and really communicate. Like, a thing I do sometimes is just like explain, look, this coffee is lighter roasted, it's single origin, so it will be a bit more tea-like. It's not going to be as strong, but you find more flavors, and let me know if you don't like it, then I can fix Americano for you. But just make people prepared, because if they expect a classic Swedish,
and then
Brew
they probably
cafe,
find that,
yeah.
and then
Yeah.
they're super happy because they feel like, oh my god, I have a
I didn't rip
amazing
them off
taste
kind
buds.
of thing,
No.
which they feel otherwise if I don't tell them.
That's cool.
So
That's nice. So when will Pascal in Stureplan switch to an Eversys, you think?
that's never gonna happen as long as I'm there. But maybe the day if I would step off one day, then
what do Eversys need to change?
No, I don't think so. Here's the misconception that I think that I obviously sell automatic machines, and a lot of my colleagues in the industry
super premium.
Well, yes, I tell customers that pretty much a robot barista.
Yes.
And I get a lot of slack maybe from colleagues in the industry who are saying oh, I'm putting baristas out of work and blah blah blah. And my philosophy is I think there's always going to be places like a Pascal where you have a skilled barista who's working behind the bar, who knows exactly what they're doing. You've had years of experience doing it. All the coffee is expertly selected. Those places aren't going to get an Eversys anytime soon.
No.
But the big advantage with Eversys is that if we have a customer who does maybe 150, 200 coffees a day, and they're a restaurant, even a cafe, but it's so hard to find good baristas nowadays, right? A lot of good baristas left the industry, and it's left this vacuum. And what we can do with Eversys is I can come in, I can help a customer choose the coffee, choose a good maybe blend of specialty coffee, put in my recipes into the machine, and then that cafe or that restaurant or whatever will serve my coffee without having to have someone who knows what they're doing. And so I'd say if the premium is here and then normal places are here, what we're helping customers do is be up here. Exactly. So close the gap. And just be more efficient. I know I've had many conversations with restaurants, and you talk to the staff and they say, they get a table of 10 who want their coffees. The staff, they hate going and making the coffee. It takes time. They're not confident doing it.
Single group machine in the basement.
Yeah, exactly. And then, they're not confident doing latte art. They're not confident doing the milk. They don't really know the difference between a latte and a cappuccino. And then, they're serving this coffee at the end, almost ashamed of what they're doing, kind of thing. And so that's where automation comes in, is my big belief. Cool. So it's definitely I think
for those who doesn't know, beans on top, and then you can really get into being technical before the espresso comes out.
For sure.
And then milk comes out.
Steamed.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's
and you couldn't get that separate as well in a pitcher and do your
correct. So you can do latte art.
Seen videos.
Yeah, so you can do latte art for sure. You can also just get it straight in the cup if it's a takeaway kind of situation. But the machine itself, you obviously have to tailor it. I think people have this misconception, and this is just equipment in general, that you just you buy an expensive machine and then it's fine. It'll make good coffee, and that's not true.
No.
But
it's sometimes even harder.
Yeah,
more
then you
pressure,
need correct.
More things, more heat.
Well, more tools,
more
I'd say.
muscles,
More tools that you need to know how to make them work, right? But then I'd say if you work with a traditional setup, you need to hire someone who has the knowledge of all the tools. Whereas if you buy an automatic setup, so an Eversys, then you have whoever the supplier is. So for us, for example, in Sweden, we are the ones who know how to use the tools and set it up for the customer. But yeah, you're exactly right. So you put the coffee in the top, and then you go in and you pretty much do a coffee in the same way that you would do it. You set that recipe, right? And the big power is and we all know this from working in the coffee industry, is that you put in a fresh coffee. After a few days, if you don't tweak the grinder, you've got these rubbish shots coming out. 7-second, horrible coffees. And you have if you put yourself into a cafe owner's shoes or a restaurant owner's shoes, and they don't have someone who's skilled, they don't have anyone who's doing that calibration. They maybe calibrate once a month or once every 6 months when the coffee supplier comes out and fixes it. But that's nowhere near close enough. But with Eversys, they have this auto calibration. So you pretty much just tell it the recipe. This is the target time, and then the rest of the recipe. So dose, yield, pre-infusion, water, temperature, the whole thing. And then it'll measure, like for every shot that it does, it'll measure the dose, so how much coffee's gone in, and then it'll measure the time, and it'll say, okay, these are the parameters that are allowed, and if it's either too much or too little coffee, then it knows to increase or decrease the amount that comes out, and then if it's too long or too short, it's going to automatically change the grinder back to the recipe. And so you can kind of, and we've seen this, you can set up a machine, let it run for a few months, come back, and it's got exactly the same coffee, which is crazy, because you know most, I would argue that a lot of chains can't even offer that level of consistency. You really need to have someone who knows what they're doing. Kind of thing. You need a Håkan.
You need a Håkan.
And so that's, I mean, I see, like, we actually wrote an article in the Brew Journal at the start of this year of trends in the industry. So where do we see the industry going, kind of thing. And my big belief in the industry is that we're going to, on the commercial side, so in the cafes and that we're going to see a lot more automation. And that doesn't necessarily have to mean Eversys, but I think it will be automation. I know that Roslin uses puck press. They use grind by weight. They use an Uber milk. So what is the difference between that and an Eversys, really?
To be fair, an Eversys makes so much better milk than the average barista. I've
Yeah,
never seen Eversys
100%.
do bad milk ever.
100%. No, it's so...
And for those who are interested, what about all the alternatives
of
milk?
Yeah, I mean, it works with anything. You can choose 2 milks. So you can
choose 2
yeah.
milks.
So you've got 2 where the machine will automatically foam it. So, and you just choose. I'd say, like, what we've seen, at least in Sweden, is if you take the 2 most common, so it's normally regular milk and oat milk, that covers 95%. You know, and then maybe someone who wants a soy or a pea milk or whatever it is, there's also a steam one on most machines. So you can actually steam. So it handles the milks well. And so going back to my predictions in the coffee industry, like I think that on the commercial side, so cafes, restaurants, all of this, it's going towards automation. For efficiency reasons, you know, so then you don't need to have so many staff working at once. For consistency reasons, I mean, there's nothing worse than having your head barista be sick for a week, and then you have no idea what's going on, kind of thing. So yeah, for all of these reasons. Also time, you save a lot of time with an automatic machine. And then I think that on the home side, that leaves the big space for people who are genuinely interested in coffee to nerd out at home. Because, as Håkan wrote an article about as well recently, arguably, if you're a home barista, you have a better chance of pulling off a perfect espresso than someone in a cafe. So you have like all of the tools that you can get, the WDT, you can do the Ross dropless.
You can take all the time you need, basically. You can create your own brew water, add it to the tank, which you can't as easily do in a commercial machine. And you can do the pressure profiling, which some commercial machines can do that, but let's be honest, how many do actually use that function? Because they usually take a lot of time. So
for sure. Yeah, and so I really see, like, I'm convinced that the future is automation. It doesn't have to be Eversys, but I'm betting pretty big, having started a company selling Eversys, that the Eversys will be there. And then I think that there'll be a big push towards, like, there'll be a big resurgence or growth on the home kind of consumer side, where people who are genuinely interested maybe nerd out at home. I think that, I don't know how you feel about this, or you who've been in the industry for even longer than us, but it feels like coffee and being a barista isn't as sexy as it once was. And I think that people have kind of realized that, like, okay, it's a job. You know, I'm very passionate about coffee, but if I'm working in a cafe, I'm not nerding out about coffee the same way that I thought I would.
Because you need to sit on so many chairs and do so much stuff at once, and it all comes down to, like, taking Roslin as an example. You can be like steaming milk all day, but in Sweden you don't, because you have to do everything.
Exactly. And I think in a cafe, I would almost argue you need to have good coffee, and it needs to be consistent. There's no question. But service is where you make or break. You know, service is where you actually make your regulars. I mean, most of the regulars who go to Pascal know Håkan by name, kind of thing. And it was the same when I worked. Like
just to sneak in, we have like a filter that we don't care if you have a diploma or if you competed in coffee. Like, if your customer service skills are not there, then you're not going to get the job, because we care more about you being.
Colonna talked about that as well.
Yes, he did. Exactly.
Yeah. So it's very important, because you can train someone to make coffee. You don't even have to be an expert, but you just have to understand basics and have very basic skills about communicating the different coffees, for example. But that's it. It's like, you don't need more than that.
No, exactly. So. And just to sneak in, like, one final thing about automation, and then I'm done. But that's another big one. So once upon a time, if you're a cafe owner, you would have to hire a barista based on skill and hope that they're good with customers.
And would stay.
And would stay for more than a year, which is very difficult. You know, I think the people who are very good or very passionate about coffee aren't always the best at social skills, and vice versa. The people who are very social maybe don't care about the product that they're serving or care so much about coffee. And so a big thing, or a big advantage with having an automatic machine or an automatic setup, or an automated setup, is that you can now hire for social skills and service skills, and then the machine kind of takes care of the quality. And you see that, like, there's some big cases in the world internationally where that is happening. So Blank Street is the biggest one. Yep. The whole concept is based around Eversys and hiring good, like, service-minded people. Black Sheep is another one in the UK. They've gone over to Eversys now. So the trend has started. So I think it's just a matter of time until it kind of grows.
And Starbucks is like, told you so.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, respect,
Have they been doing it for like 25 years?
and they've gotten so much slack. I mean, I've probably sat here at a podcast and slammed Starbucks for having an automatic, but it makes a lot of sense, especially if you're at that scale. Yeah. Like I started my career in a cafe, and there it was like we still had a traditional machine, so it was still like grind and tamp and everything, but everything was so like meticulously documented of how you should do that it was almost impossible to fail. It was like
almost automatic.
It was like, say someone ordered like a small drink. You had a green portafilter, I think it was green, and then you press the green button on the grinder. There was this like lever tamper with a spring, and then you press the green button on the espresso machine. The only thing that could kind of make or break was the milk, but you weren't allowed to actually sit in milk unless you'd got like 1 or 2 years experience. So if you were doing milk, it would be only for takeaways then at the beginning. So it was like that was so extremely documented there. But yeah, that's
cool.
That's what I work with.
Yeah.
Tell us about Barista Academy.
Well, so it's as I mentioned earlier, it's an online-based Swedish educational platform for coffee making. Yeah. So I've only done it in Swedish, where I talk Swedish. For now, there's only one course up, which is called Barista Foundation, and the idea behind this was just that, you know, I took some time off between working at April Coffee in Copenhagen and coming back to Pascal. And I was like, I always had this dream to create an online course, because as a side gig, I've always done courses the past like 3-4 years now. But then it's personal courses, which I love doing them, but they are so time consuming, and it usually is like you do it from 6 to 9 in the evening, and then you open the day after, and it's like...
And it's for 3 people or 4 people.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like,
and
the
it's
impact is so low.
And I was like, okay, I can't say yes to everyone, but can I create a course where I can be on several places at once? So this is a fully digital version. But I also realized something along the way, because I got a tip from someone, which was never create a course before you sold it or before you know that people actually ask for it. This particular course is one of those courses where people actually, like if you sign up for a barista course, you do want to go there. It's like an experience, you know, you don't just pay for the knowledge, but you pay for the experience to meet new people, etc. So it didn't go as well as expected. But with that being said, I had many requests for doing a pour-over course. So I'm doing a little 180 now. So nice. I recorded a pour-over course, and I'm switching to English, because most people who request this course speak English. So I just admit, like, okay, maybe it was the wrong move to do it in Swedish, but
you learned a lot. And it's...
But I think as well, like, just to go back to your original Barista Foundation course, like a big advantage of that is, like, if you do a barista course in person, like live, you have it, you're there. Maybe you get a little bit of like material to take away, but it's, you maybe remember 30-40%, right? And then it's so hard to come back to that. Whereas with this digital, I think people buy access kind of eternally, right? Like they buy
exactly.
It and
they keep
back.
it forever. Yeah.
And so for anyone who's kind of just gotten in, say someone wants to have a job at Espresso House, right? Obviously, Espresso House has a barista course, or it doesn't have to be Espresso House. It can be a cafe in some small town in Sweden. It can be someone who wants to start making coffee. Doesn't matter. But just to be able to, like, the best learning, and I know that I've done this when I started learning coffee, is like you learn a little bit, you go and try it, and then you go back and you learn a little bit more, and then you go back and try it and experiment, and you go back, and that's what's possible with this kind of platform that you've created, is that you can kind of dip in, learn circumstantial knowledge of, okay, this is how I calibrate espresso, for example. Then you can go and experiment and do that, maybe at work. And then you come back home and be like, okay, I really want to learn on milk now. So then you look at the modules about milk, and then you can go back and practice that. so you don't get everything at once. You get like piece by piece.
Yeah, I lock
what you
it, so
want.
you cannot do the whole course in 1 week. It's like locked, and you have to wait a couple of days.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to add there, because my experience, I did so many in-person trainings, and I've seen the biggest problems people have, and it's the similar problems you've seen as well. You know, people struggle. They do the right technique with steaming the milk, but they still get bubbles because something's slightly for whatever they can't pour the latte art. So in this course, I also did sections where I'm like, if your latte art looks like this, what mistake did you do? And then it comes a quiz, and then afterwards I explain what mistake happened, and you can see it in slow-mo. And I do so many like, okay, this mistake, it happens like this. Are you making one of these mistakes? So I did get feedback from students that they really think that was super helpful, because it's very often you go see a course or watch a tutorial, you just get explained what to do, but then you do it wrong and you don't really get a feedback loop. I'm like, well, how do I correct this? You know, so that's something I really took into consideration.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, like
it took some time to do it, but
but like you said, it is. I think that people like whenever people make mistakes, it's not like critical errors that they're doing something super wrong, and that's what can be difficult if you're just looking for information online. Because like people are like, oh, okay, this is how you steam milk, for example, step 1, 2, 3, and they can do that and see that and be like, okay, well, what did I do wrong? Like I'm doing exactly these steps, but I'm still doing something wrong, and it's often something super small, maybe not aggressive enough on the steam, like power. Maybe it's a little bit too long on the bubbles, or a little bit too late with adding foam or something like that.
Or nailing the milk, but then they take down the pitcher before turning the steam.
Yeah, and that's something that you can't find online. Like that's you kind of need to have a coach, and I think that you've done a really good job of putting that into your course, where you are like you pick up on those small mistakes, because that is where the people make the most mistakes. It's not. I mean, most people can put a steam wand into a pitcher and turn the power on, right? It's not that part isn't so hard. But then it's the small tweaks that get you from maybe 80 up to 100. Yeah. That's where people make mistakes.
Yeah. But it's a fun project. I don't want to advertise too much here, but one thing I've done is like with 3 different grinders. I mean, now it's the first time I'm gonna brew this coffee from Brazil with this grinder. I never touched this, and you can see like the full process, how it looks. Not just this is my recipe to sell, but you see how I tweak the grinder, how many shots I waste, and etc. How I set the menu and stuff. So.
Cool. Should get an Eversys instead.
Yeah, exactly. That solves the problem.
Exactly. You have my number.
For the home barista. Yeah, exactly.
Cool. We're going to wrap this up and do some espressos, I think. Maybe some pour-overs.
Amazing.
Last question that I also asked Sloan guys is preferred brew method. Okay.
Espresso.
Espresso?
Yeah, I have to say filter coffee.
What filter?
Like pour-over, I think.
What pour?
Which
brewer?
Okay, I'm going to say my go-to is V60.
Yeah. With the double bloom recipe. Boom.
Exactly, the double bloom. That's one of our best performing videos, actually. Anyway, no, yeah. I actually just got the, I don't know if you've seen this, but Seabarist, they're like this, they make filters. Yeah. They've got this dual chamber V60 paper.
Oh my God.
Crazy. So you can have 2.
They're like fast, slow things.
Yeah, so they have 2. It's a V60 paper, but there's like a paper in the middle, so you can have 2 different coffees in the at the same time. Yeah, like it's so interesting. It's so cool. I haven't tried it yet.
Blends are coming back.
Yeah, but this is so interesting because there's you can blend in so many different ways, right? You can blend before roasting. Well, before that, you can blend coffee before roasting. Yeah. That's not always going to be the best. After roasting, you can blend, I guess, after grinding if you want.
Yes.
But this is such a unique way. Like I've never seen 2 in the same brew. I mean, you're almost doing 2 different brews and blending them together. Yeah. I've never seen that before.
So you can have like one fine, one coarse.
Yeah, you could even sift the coffee and separate the fines into.
Or I mean, I was thinking you could do because actually you do see this a lot in the world stage now. People are blending coffees again. Yeah. Like that's become hot again. And. I mean,
told you so, Alex. We need to start making blends.
And people are blending all these different kinds of coffees, but they're doing they'll blend, they'll grind, and then they'll put all the coffees together, and then they'll put it into a V60, for example. And this is but obviously logic would state that those coffees are going to extract at different rates. Yeah. So then you need to tweak the grind size and find it super nice. But with this way, you could do let's say I have a super light roast, washed coffee. Then I could do one recipe on half of the chamber, and then you've got like a carbonic macerated natural in the other with another recipe, and you could blend. It'll blend. I don't know. I haven't tried it yet, but it's pretty cool. Yeah. So that's not my go-to yet, but
we have to try it first.
But that was something super cool. You can see the results of that on the Brew Journal.
That's nice. And people find you best, easiest way? Instagram, and then just click follow or subscribe, or
100%. So I'd say
brewjournal.com now, or
brewjournal.eu.
EU.
Yeah, and so go there, find our espresso cheat sheet. I would say that's a great tool.
Yeah, we'll link it here as well,
yeah, yeah.
so people can...
Otherwise, you can follow us on Instagram at the Brew Journal. But the if you want to get the full experience, the email newsletter, that's where you got to be. Sign up to that.
Exactly.
Cool. Thank you so much for
Awesome.
coming.
Thank you.
Follow up
Thank you, Oscar.
a few months ago.
Yeah, nice to be here.